Well, it's the month of March, and it's about time we start talking about St. Patrick, but this time I had a much more serious message for you than what I usually have. For one, let's get right down to talking about my lack of money. What I gotta do to solve an immediate problem I have. This is my prayer jar. I've been living on a prayer for a very long time. But I've been going through this prayer jar, and today I want to talk about some of the items been in this prayer jar. So if you bear with me and pray with me for a bit, I'd much appreciate it. I want to talk about St. Patrick. He was quite the man, and he's one of the saints I admire the most, which is why I honor him with my Irish celebration, even though I'm only half Irish. The other half is Scottish, so I'll get to that some other day. Now, St. Patrick, as you know, he evangelized the Christian faith to the people of Ireland in this early 6th century, late 5th century, right around that time now. And so he baptized many, many, many souls, even more than St. Peter did, I believe. And it's quite the thing when you think about it, how profound an impact that had on the nation in Ireland, which was not even yet a nation back then, right? But he was really on a mission to the Brits. And so I don't want to get into complex parts about this in this little video. But I do want to begin a year that's a little bit more serious than last year was, partly because I don't have the capacity to produce extremely entertaining videos. I'd really like to turn to more educational videos. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. First off, I'm in a pickle with the financial situation I find myself in because my new employer, the trucking company whose name I won't mention given the fact that it's not all a beautiful thing for me, has put me on a weekend that lasted over 3 weeks without income. That's a big problem for me. And so therefore I can pay my light bill. I had to pawn my ring once again, my wedding rings. Had to also get an insurance bill due this month. It's exceptional, doesn't usually come up. So I've been Ubering as much as I could, but it doesn't make up for the deficit here. And when you're behind, you wind up with the insufficient funds, the late fees, the penalties, all these good things that kick you when you're down, you know. Now I have to be grateful for these things because if it wasn't for that, I'd never know what it was like to live life in a pressure cooker. I would never be able to pray for the poor the way that a man ought to who shares his family with the whole of humankind. And I think this is something that St. Patrick, who was no wealthy man, actually who was a slave and held captive for a long time, knew well. But yet the Lord somehow always seemed to provide. And so you live life living on a prayer. And so this prayer jar is symbol of such a thing. Now I have also my grandparents that I celebrate in this clock here, which I'm now putting all these things up for sale so that I can maybe raise a little bit of funds since I haven't got the money. Now also this nice table, let me show you what it looks like on the bottom here. This actually is a piece, has a mirror along the bottom, and it has a drawer that slides out like that, and it's actually quite nice. And this used to be in my mother's foyer and in the house, in the old house I grew up in. And this clock has been in the family for generations, so it's very difficult to part with. It's the one last thing I have that has any real value. So it's a working clock and chimes and dings. You've heard it on another video, you see. So that's that. Now, in the prayer jar, which I open not every day, but occasionally do go through and remind myself of the things that are very important to pray about. I had some items in here that I haven't talked to you about, but I do want to discuss them because they're quite serious, and I think that they need to become a part of the teaching videos that I plan to do this year. So I'm going to follow up with it, and so I'm just going to read these letters that were in the prayer jar. The one of them is from Metropolitan Archbishop Arlambos Primate from Washington Road, from the Holy Ukrainian National Autocephalic Orthodox Church in Exile, Blessings of Kiev. Greek Pan-Orthodox Patriarchate Pro Tem New Jerusalem, Labinos. Well, what you'll probably have no clue what any of that means, but that's quite a lengthy title, and it has something to do with the history of how this man became the metropolitan of his church. And in this letter, dated 2009, January 12th, Dear James, the Archbishop believes you would be a good man to act as a liaison between the Orthodox and Catholic Church. Please let me know you received this note. The Lord's blessing be with you and your family, Bishop Petros. Now, so a little background I'll share with you, and to first say that the particular jurisdiction I just gave you the name of is not one that is accepted by the wider Orthodox Church in many parts. Some do, but the majority would not. And as such, since I was involved in that ministry back in the early 1990s, and also for a short time in 2008, when I went back and helped them with their website, that particular jurisdiction is not considered canonical by some of the others. But then again, that's the whole thing with Orthodoxy, is that that happens often enough. So it doesn't necessarily mean it's not Orthodox. The teaching attempts to be Orthodox anyway, but it's maybe not a legitimate ministry in the eyes of some. Okay, not all, but some. And interestingly, if you look at the website, it's stmichael.org, you'll find all sorts of credentials and relationships with popes and such, and some sort of Byzantine Order of the Holy Sepulchre, which is the ministry to protect the Holy Sepulchre from raiders and such. It's an ancient ministry there for some knights. So there's a bit of knighting going on in this ministry, medals from popes, all sorts of things the man has, all right, as the Archbishop there. So that's just some background, but it's also quite unorthodox in certain ways, so, which, for instance, this Bishop Petros here, you think I'm an odd man dressed as a leprechaun. Actually, that's just to celebrate St. Patrick. But this man, Bishop Petros, he loved to imitate Elvis Presley, see, and he was quite a good imitator of Elvis Presley, and he was ultimately defrocked. So the man that issued this letter was defrocked by the Archbishop for imitating Elvis Presley. So imagine what you'll do with me. Now, then on to the second letter. These are matters to pray about. Obviously, very serious matter, the reunion between the Orthodox and the Catholics, or a liaison, an ecumenical liaison there. But what this one says is actually even more of something to ponder for a driver who does a lot of thinking like myself. Evangelical Pan-Orthodox Archdiocese Church, Mr. James Carvin, is dated September 21st, 1994. You see, now this is a full 15 years prior to the other letter. This has been in my prayer jar for all this time. Regarding resignation, acceptance, and regarding reassignment, missionaries to broadcast the Elijah message to the body of Christ. Dear James Carvin and family, your resignation letter signed by you and your wife Lisa has been read and discerned. As administrator of the college, St. Michael Academy, it is perceived as a resignation. We do hereby accept your resignation as associate professor and student at our college. This is final and will not be retracted. We have, however, at this time awarded you your degree of Masters in Christianity, which we feel you are deserving. We appreciate all you have contributed to our college program, which is St. Michael Academy of Eschatology. We wish you and your family well in your future uses of our teachings and your earned degree. Your doctorate is not needed. The chapel is for college students, of which is intended to serve their needs at St. Michael Chapel Sacraments. Restoration of the Holy Sacraments to our Protestant brothers. So he wants me to restore the sacraments to the Protestant brothers. And in this other one, he wants me to be liaison between the Orthodox and the Catholic Church. So that's quite a tall order. Now, as enclosed, receipt for your donation in lieu of any outstanding tuitions owed the college is attached, and a part of this communication. You are needed now to go forth and to bishop, and the bishopric gives ecclesiastical authorization for this worthy assignment to you. Sincerely, Dean of College and Chief Administrator Anna Tobin, and the Reverend Dr. Robert Buklas. Reverend Dr. Robert Buklas of DD Chief Administrator. Go to the church, and God's blessings and love to you and your wife. Bishop Haralambos of Pentopolis. So, and the rest is in Greek. So you maybe wouldn't know. But now, I took it somewhat lightly, given the fact that the jurisdictional issues exist, and this college has its accreditation from the accreditations of Kentucky, I believe, some organization like this, which some have claimed is a diploma mill. I will tell you one thing, that it's out of much sweat and blood that my learning has taken place, okay? I have more education than the vast majority of people, and had already been attending a well-accredited postgraduate theology at the St. Vincent de Paul Regional Catholic Seminary prior to attending here and then becoming one of the teachers at that college, okay? And a student to finish my master's up. So that's the facts. And that's my background. And a lot of you don't realize I do actually have such an accreditation. It's just not something you'd brag about, knowing it come from a diploma mill or from a person whose bishop was an Elvis impersonator who had been defrocked by a bishop who was fiddling around so much with the popes and had a controversial jurisdiction, to say the least, among the Orthodox. Okay? So it's not something you normally would brag about, because it doesn't really get you anywhere by bragging on those credentials. However, as a driver who's been doing a lot of thinking, it certainly does have an effect on a person's life when they've invested so much time thinking about the profound things. Most of which gets to the next point, outside of the fact that I had to sell my clock, my table, I have a couple other items in the home, and to raise some money immediately so the lights don't go out in the apartment, okay? That's an important issue. But that's just an immediate thing. The Lord's always provided somehow the miracles that I needed when I was really seriously in a pinch. It has to do with my career. Here I am driving an 18-wheeler now, and I'm never at home. Now, my wife, she has had a serious handicap ever since her stroke. She's partially paralyzed. And day by day goes, and her health's not improving. She's starting to lose her ability to walk as well. Now, I realize I have to get me training in for the trucking job, and the only way that they arrange it is cross-country, which means I'm away from home quite a bit. So my wife needs some help, maybe a companion to help her over the next several months. That's one issue, if you could maybe help with that. I'm not comfortable having to leave me home, but unfortunately, my finances have set me into a situation where I haven't got much choice but to leave home. Now, the company, which I don't have much good to say about, has left me in a furlough for the past 3 weeks, going on 4. That has to do with them not having somebody to come by and pick me up, to take me for another tour of duty. And which will be 9 weeks next time. The next home time I requested was to see my son graduate. Okay, that's going to be coming in the beginning of May. So that's my life story there so far. But except for the fact that here this man is asking about the Elijah message and how to broadcast it, And you can imagine, since this was happening in 1994 and I've had all these chances to think about it as I drive, that I might have quite a few thoughts about what the Elijah message actually is. And so this is what I want to do for the next year. I actually want to do some teaching lessons, since I have been a teacher, and to get that onto the internet and teach what the Elijah message is, as far as I can tell, after having prayed and taught about it quite a bit. And I hope you would appreciate that even if I lack the types of credentials that some others have, that I was indeed sent out by a metropolitan bishop to do this precise thing, and that might be quite rare. And maybe if I asked in all honesty and humility what the real meaning of all of these things were, that maybe the Lord might answer me. You know, my patron St. James, he says that one of the first things he does say is, if any man will ask for wisdom, let him ask in faith, and it will be given to him by the Lord with liberty and without any reproach for asking it. It'll be granted to him. And I've been asking the Lord for wisdom regarding these things and a lot of other things, and also how to reconcile the Orthodox and the Catholics and such. And I can tell you a lot of stories, and I have a lot to share about this, so that's what I'm going to do over the next year. And I got to say, I won't be wearing a leprechaun's hat at the time that I do this. I'm going to be much more serious about it. I'm going to actually do some serious teaching. And so these are not going to be so much entertaining as educational. I ask you to take some time to look and think about these things, because the message is extremely important. It's not just something that I'm going to make up and be funny about, okay? So that's how we're going to go about this. And I just want to leave you that message and then move on to the lessons straightforward, which I'm going to have to be doing from in my truck. And that's no easy thing either, since there's no recording studio, no green screen, no ability to edit, and nobody contributed so far when I was asking for it. For any of these editing equipment type thing, got no microphones, nothing to do the song I made for my wife and that type of thing. But in that direction, I was hoping to entertain people, make things nice and short. You know, we're in a soundbite generation. That's why I do videos in the first place, right? You don't have time to watch all these things. You don't have time to do this, right? Well, I'd like to ask you to take the time. We have nothing but time on our hands, right? Oh no, everybody's busy like me. I understand that. So I've taken my time to preach and provide these videos for you so that we can all learn something together, okay? And you're going to be pleased that it all comes out the way that it's supposed to. Well, I see that my hour's up, must get going, and I hope you'll take it to heart what I've asked you for. I'm in quite a bit of a financial pinch. Thank you for so much for both considering my need and also caring about the whole church as you do this, okay? Because that's what we're going to be talking about in a very serious and very humble way. God bless y'all. Thank you for helping.